Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Anthony Marino, the chair of the Traffic and Transportation Committee here at Community Board 10 in Brooklyn. I do apologize that my camera is not on as I am currently driving, but I am listening in to tonight's meeting and I will be participating. We have on the docket a presentation from the DOT. So I want to welcome everyone to the meeting. Also, a happy St. Patrick's Day in advance. And I will throw it over to Leroy, who will introduce his team for the presentation tonight. Thanks, everybody.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Chairman Marino and District Manager Josephine, for allowing us to be here to give this presentation for the update on the BQE, something that everybody's been wanting and looking forward to hearing. And with me this evening, as always, anything that's not BQE, please, that's for me. So bring that up to me as always. And I know Josephine knows this. Don't wait until the transportation meeting to bring it up. Bring it up on a regular basis. I talk to DM Josephine regularly. I think we talk almost every other day, don't we, Josephine?
We do. We really do.
So definitely, if you have a DOT issue, please bring it to her, and she will bring it to me directly, and we can work on it. And hopefully, by the time we come to a meeting like this, you have the answer. So without further ado, I introduce Danielle Zuckerman, who will give you an update today from on the BQE.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm Danielle Zuckerman, Director of Government Affairs at New York City DOT. I've been working on the BQE for many years in various roles. So I wanted to talk to you today about our engagement process, and I have a little bit of a deck, and then we can talk a little bit more about it. But the main point is that we have some workshops coming up later this month. We have an in-person and a virtual. So we encourage folks to participate and give feedback. So I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So the Adams administration, when the mayor took office, reviewed the existing BQE plans and decided that what we needed to prioritize was urgently, addressing the part of the structure that the city owns, which is between Atlantic Avenue and Sand Street. It's very old. It needs repairs. We want to make those repairs as soon as possible. And, there was the status quo plan that was left by the last administration was going to invest $500 million to kind of freeze the structure, but not really make it any better. This administration wants to take advantage of the once in a generation federal funding opportunities we have through the bipartisan infrastructure law to get some federal money and just fix the BQE once and for all. The mayor is also prioritizing equity, which means not just focusing on the city-owned section of the BQE between Atlantic and Sands, but focusing on the whole corridor. And the state owns the parts north and south in Brooklyn of that section, and I'll get into the specifics of that in a moment, but the city wants to make sure that there are investments in all of the communities along the corridor, because we recognize that the BQE has bifurcated communities and has had some harmful impacts all across Brooklyn. And underpinning all of this is really robust stakeholder involvement. We've been doing a ton of community meetings since we started this process in the fall. And so, we're really excited to talk to you tonight about what's been going on. So just to recap, the BQE in Brooklyn is largely owned by the state. New York City owns 1.5 miles of it. That includes the triple cantilever and a little bit north of that up to Sand Street. And the rest of it is owned by the state. And the BQE in Brooklyn is made up of basically a bunch of trenches and viaducts, which we're all very familiar with. It's like those overhead things or, the buried trench, and they're not super pleasant. And that's kind of replicated north and south along the corridor in neighborhoods like Williamsburg, Greenpoint, Sunset Park, and Bay Ridge. And just a little bit of history on the city-owned section of the BQE. So it was built, the whole BQE was built between 1937 and 1964, with the central section built kind of towards the end of World War II. It carries over 130,000 vehicles a day, 13,000 of which are trucks. So this is a really critical freight corridor for the entire region, moving goods and people all day, every day. And we want to make sure that we preserve it as a way to move people and goods. Again, the city-owned section, I'm sure you all are very familiar with this configuration. It's actually a really, marvelous feat of engineering, but, that makes it really complicated to make repairs on. So it's, it's a very unique structure. It's nestled in between a neighborhood and a park. So it's a challenge. And then the state-owned sections, which you're all very familiar with. This is kind of the look and feel of these, and you can see that, they pose various challenges to safety, to access to recreation and healthcare, noise pollution, and we want to make sure to address some of the challenges that these structures present in communities along the corridor. And as we work on, reconstructing particularly BQE Central, we're hoping to incorporate elements of sustainability and resiliency, making sure that we're using project delivery methodologies that can do things quicker and also more sustainably. So that's something that is centered in the work we're doing here. So the strategy that the city is pursuing for BQE Central is to move forward expeditiously on a long-term fix to capitalize on the federal funding opportunities. And for BQE North and South will be, we had our first round of workshops in the fall. The second round of workshops will be next week and the week after. And we are going to be both implementing some projects along the corridor as early as this year. And we're going to continue talking to communities to get some feedback on what kinds of projects folks would like to see implemented in the months and years ahead. And then on freight, I mentioned the BQE is a key freight corridor, and City Hall has convened an interagency task force to help deepen our work in moving freight to rail, to maritime uses, to move to cleaner trucks, to move to cargo bikes and other kinds of vehicles to limit the really large trucks and polluting trucks that we're seeing on our roadways, while still making sure that we're getting things from point A to point B. And so on our community engagement, the approach we're taking is different than what has been done thus far with the BQE. We were really focused on BQE Central and those neighborhoods adjacent to it, those neighborhood associations. But we realized that because the BQE is such a critical corridor for the region, we want to make sure that we're having a conversation that's broader, that includes not just folks who live next to the BQE, but folks who use the BQE, transportation advocates, environmental justice advocates. I'm hearing an echo. Okay, that's better.
I muted everyone.
Thank you. So we want to broaden the conversation to, industry groups, freight advocates, all kinds of nitrogen tenant associations, all kinds of stakeholders who have a stake in what happens here. And there are many disparate interests and uses when it comes to the BQE. So we want to make sure all of those are represented. And so we've been engaging in various ways. We've had public workshops. Each workshop we do is both in person and virtual to give people the option to attend either way. We have interpretation in, I think, up to 7 languages at some of these meetings. So that option is available for folks. We established a community visioning council, which meets regularly to help kind of guide the process on, delivering information to the community. We have created, we have a survey that we had circulated. We did some working groups with some industry experts. We also have a community partners program where through our consultant, organizations are being funded to do grassroots outreach in their communities. And so, like I said, the Community Visioning Council they're not, decision makers, but they have helped advise us and make sure that things we're presenting are clearer and, help to kind of inform our messaging. And the Community Partners Program is something that we've been really excited about because it's something that DOT hasn't really done before, but there are 18 community-based organizations along the corridor, primarily in BQE North and BQE South, who are getting $25,000 to undertake their own outreach. We realize that the city's not always the best messenger. And so we've identified groups that are not necessarily transportation experts, but they have expertise in mobilizing constituencies and reaching New Yorkers in their preferred venue and their preferred language, using their preferred medium. And it's actually been really interesting to see how they've, conducted their own outreach. And we think we're bringing a lot more folks into the conversation. And we're hoping that folks who have engaged with our community partners are going to be showing up to the workshops in the next couple of weeks. And this is the list of the organizations that we've been working with on this effort. And we encourage you guys, if you have relationships here, to reach out to them and try and join, their events, or, again, please come to our events. We're just trying to do whatever we can to get the word out. And like I said, they do engagement in 23 languages and dialects. They're really, doing remarkable work in reaching people who, the city would otherwise not reach. So far, they've had, I think at this point, they've had over 45 activities, and that's growing, and they're doing all kinds of different things to reach folks. This is the timeline we're working with. For BQE Central, we have some interim repairs coming up this year that will help keep the structure in good working order for the next couple of years. And we're doing visioning on BQE Central. We'll continue to make any urgent repairs as needed. We have a contract at hand in case anything arises. It's the most monitored structure we have in our among our assets, so we're keeping a close eye on it. People should not worry. And we just finished our third round of workshops for BQE Central, and we will continue refining those design concepts that we showed based on feedback, and we'll prepare for beginning the environmental review as early as this fall. And then we'll work, once we have a concept that's going through that process, we'll work on procurement and design, and eventually starting construction early 2027. On BQE North and South, we are, still early in our engagement. As I said, it's the second round of workshops. We're going to be talking about some various concepts that can be applied throughout the corridor. And we're going to, start implementing short-term elements as soon as possible, things that we can do in-house. And then we're looking to implement, longer term improvements, whether those are, projects on the city streets or potentially projects in partnership with New York State that are on the state structure. So New York City controls the streets, below and adjacent to the highway, but we don't actually control the structure. So any changes to the structure need to be done in coordination with New York State. And on our freight efforts, there's a lot of existing work on freight, and we're continuing to build on that and, seek federal grants for those opportunities. We'll be pursuing federal grants for BQE North and South projects as well. And so we'll continue to deepen that work as we go on. Oh, and these are the dates for the workshops for BQE South. There's March 21st is in person. Leroy can forward you the dates for that, or I can put it in the chat when I close my screen. And then there's a virtual version of the workshop on March 30th. All of our BQE meeting materials and everything you need to know is at nyc.gov/BQE. And, we've been making little explainer videos to talk about environmental review and listing our community visioning council members, our community partners, and trying to have one central place where all BQE information lives. So we can send you that information too. And this, again, is just the schedule for the upcoming meetings for the next couple of weeks. It's going to be fast and furious, so we're really excited. And that's it. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you so much. Anyone have any questions? That was a very thorough presentation. I appreciate that.
Yes. Is Steve talking?
Okay, Steve.
Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, could we just go back to the last slide that you had? Because I saw there where it says that you're going to spend time promoting the initiative. My question is, what do you mean by promoting? Oh,
Sorry, I'm just trying to get my screen back up. Forgive me.
yeah, there was one piece when you were talking about the communications, and I believe that you said, if I can read that one there, it says promoting BQE initiatives and social media.
Yeah.
What do you mean by promoting?
I just mean that New York City DOT is boosting all of the events and efforts that we're taking on our social media accounts.
Yeah, because it appears to me when I hear that word that you're promoting it, it doesn't necessarily mean that it means you're promoting what you've already got rather than listening for what it's just I'm a little bit concerned about the use of the term.
Interesting. Yeah, we can change that. And I guess what that is designed to mean is that we're trying to get the word out that way. That's kind of one of the ways we're trying to draw people to the workshop so we can then listen to folks.
Yeah, and like I'm saying, there's a difference. If you're promoting something on TV, it means you want what you already have to be sold. And I do think that the word should be changed as to what it really what the real intention is.
Sorry, I was
Thank you.
muted. Do you have a suggestion for a different word that you think would fit better?
I'm not. No, I don't. Okay,
Okay.
but I just know that the word itself implies that things are already in the can, and that at least it does to me.
Okay.
And that you're really just telling people what you're going to do rather than letting them know that they still have an opportunity to weigh in on the plan.
Got it. Okay, we can change that. Thank you.
You
Thank
say
you.
something like discussing.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that. I can change it right now.
Thank you.
That's fast.
Wow. There you go, Steve.
Doris? Doris, you're on mute? I'm sorry, I did mute everyone because we were getting some
Standard,
feedback.
yes. In an earlier presentation on the emergency repairs, we were told that there were going to be sensors that would detect overweight trucks. But I've since read that there's a problem with them and that's been delayed. What is the
Yeah.
status of that?
Yeah, I could talk a little bit about it. So the state legislature authorized a weigh-in motion program on the city-owned portion of the BQE, and that's to use sensors to automatically enforce overweight trucks. What happened was, because it's a first-in-the-nation program, we found that some of the codes, the nationally established codes, were not compatible. So we have to get those codes updated. We're working with all of these organizations with all of these acronyms, the American Society for Testing and Materials and the National Conference of Weights and Measures. And it's like a really arduous bureaucratic process to get those things updated. So we're working with, we're talking with the state legislators, to see if there's, we can update the legislation. We're trying to make sure that we can do this as quickly as possible, but it's, being a trailblazer is sometimes challenging when you're starting a program that doesn't have a precedent in the country. It's used in other countries, but our codes have not quite caught up. So we're working actively to try and update those. And in the meantime, we're working with NYPD on an enforcement blitz to try to use our weigh-in motion sensors to to send a message to PD to have them know who to pull over. So PD already does a lot of truck enforcement, but having the data from the sensors that we have will help them more surgically target who is actually overweight and hopefully yield better outcomes in terms of enforcement. So that's where we are right now. We're firing on all cylinders trying to get that going.
Because it's a really important program, because it can be used at all entry points in New York City to keep overweight vehicles off our streets. It'd be interesting to see how that progresses. And there are so many trucks that come into the city, not come into Brooklyn, not over the Verrazano Bridge, but they come by barge into the 65th Street Yard. Some of them come into parts in Sunset Park and to the Red Hook Marine Terminal. And they do not have easy access to the BQE. So, because the ones from 65th Street and from Sunset Park, if there's a long wait to get onto the BQE at Hamilton Avenue, they just take Hicks Street. So I really think we need to work at ways to get trucks directed more easily to the BQE and keep them off city streets.
Yeah, we definitely agree. You know, we want to keep trucks on the highway and not on the local roads. The local roads are not designed to withstand, you know, some of the kinds of trucks that we see. That's why we're also simultaneously working to just reduce the number of trucks that we have. And we recognize, you know, we will always need trucks, and there will always be trucks. A lot of them are coming from out of state. But, you know, trying to, you know, move towards other kinds of modes to relieve the streets.
A few years ago, Josephine Beckman and I went to a meeting at the Red Hook Marine Terminal. And at that point, someone there suggested that they're like, we have marine transfer stations for garbage. We have cargo stations in every borough, so that so places like the Bronx and Brooklyn are not inundated with trucks, but that the truck traffic is shared throughout the city.
Yeah, and I think I was talking a little bit about our freight initiatives. Moving to rail and maritime uses is something we're looking closely at to just mitigate the amount of trucks we're seeing on the street. And so there aren't as many trips that need to be
Right.
taken on the street. But yeah, we completely agree.
And I think that's a very important initiative, and I personally would like to know more, but not now.
Well, I'm sure Leroy would be happy to ask our freight mobility unit to come and talk to you about all the exciting work they're doing. They're my favorite unit at DOT. They're really smart and they're doing so much cool work. We can definitely set that up.
Thank you for that, Danielle. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Freight mobility unit?
Yes, they're a great unit. And whenever Josephine asks us to come, we will come.
Sounds good to me.
That's fun.
Definitely, we have a lot of freight mobility issues as of late, so that really might be helpful. Danielle, thank you so much for a really great presentation. I've always been confused by, and maybe and I still am a little bit. So essentially, with the exception of the cantilever piece, the rest of the BQE is under the jurisdiction of state DOT. But at this point, so city DOT is really leading the effort to bring communities together, to have these workshops. At the end of the day, you know, will state DOT, is it their funding? Do they collaborate with city DOT? Oftentimes we have questions. I'm always going to Leroy, is it city or state? Is it city or state? And how do we effectively work together? Because I would hate to see, you know, all of these efforts, and I just want to make sure that everyone's on the same page in this process, and there's not a separate process that state DOT, you know, regulations have to, you know, that would not be in line with what city DOT is doing. Do you understand the question? Yes.
That's a good question. It's something that, you know, a lot of people want to know. You know, we're in regular conversation with the state. They're a partner on our application for the city-owned portion. You know, we're hopeful that they'll come on board in a meaningful way. But I think from the city's perspective, we know that there are changes that we can make on the city-owned streets that will be really meaningful in communities, and you know, we want to do that. And so regardless of, you know, what the state ultimately wants to do with their structure, we want to make sure that we're pursuing improvements along the corridor. But we are in active conversations with them. The elected officials have been working really closely with them, and seem to be having some good conversations. So we're hopeful we're going to be able to do some more ambitious proposals. But regardless, I think our goal is to, you know, get things done. And that's why we're talking about, you know, both things that we can do in the short term within the city's wheelhouse, and bigger ideas that we can aspire to.
Great, thank you. Diane has her hand raised. Diane Granardis.
Yeah, I have just a quick question. And some of the committee members may know the answer to this, but I don't. Why is it that there is a city portion within the state portion of the highway system? Why is there that designation? Why does the city take responsibility for that short piece, and the rest belongs to the state?
That's a good question. I know it was something that we looked into a while ago, and I honestly don't remember the answer, but I will say that, that portion of the highway was built before, federal highway standards were established. So it's, it has those really narrow shoulders. It's very different than a highway that would be built today. And I know that the state was trying to fix up that portion of, years ago before my time, and then kind of walked away from it. And I don't know how we ended up getting stuck with it, to be honest, but it's ours now. And I think there are cases where the city can bring the structure into compliance with current standards and the state takes it back into their inventory. But I think that doesn't always happen that way. And ultimately it's at the state's discretion whether they want to take it to their inquiry. I'm sorry if that doesn't answer your question.
Thank you.
Danielle, I have another question. You mentioned resiliency in your presentation, and that's resiliency is something that CB10 has really advocated for in many projects. Have you identified, has New York City DOT identified any areas along the Bay Ridge portion that could benefit from, we have maybe a few areas that flood are you looking actually at the adding to, is it extra drainage? Is it the pavement, future pavement uses, materials? I saw that you had a wall you had plantings on a wall. Can you talk a little bit more about that? I'm just interested if you happen to know. If not, that's okay.
Yeah, we definitely don't have it totally mapped out. We're talking with a lot of our agency partners, like the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice and the Health Department. And, we want to hear from the communities and get a sense for, what folks think is needed. Like you mentioned that there are certain areas where you see flooding, that's useful to know about. And are there certain treatments that can be implemented that might mitigate that? And I think this is a really good opportunity for folks to just honestly have the city's ear. We're really focused on this corridor and we're talking to our agency partners all the time. And we're really looking forward to hearing what folks have to say at the next workshop and the workshop after, so we can kind of hone in on some of the issues that folks are identifying and what potential solutions could be implemented.
Danielle, it's Anthony. Just curious, how has the response been to the workshops, attendance? Are people, I know this is sort of a hot topic in a lot of areas. How has it been in response? Are things moving at a good pace, or?
Yeah, we've definitely had a lot of interest. I'm interested to see how these North and South workshops go. I think that more people attended the virtual in the first round, but we do have, as I mentioned, all these community partners who have been really out and about trying to get people's focus on this issue. So I'm looking forward to a big turnout. In terms of BQE Central, there are folks who have been really engaged with that particular project for a long time. So there's kind of an existing interest. I think they're in North and South. There are so many folks who haven't been involved thus far. So I think it's been, getting folks on board and talking to people to make sure they know what's happening. So I'm hoping for a good turnout in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, good. Thank you. Anyone else? Questions or comments? No? Oh, okay. Well, then, in that case, I guess thank you so much, Danielle and Leroy, for your presentation. And that is the only thing on our agenda tonight, I believe, right?
Yes, it is the only item.
Well, there we go.
But
Well,
stay tuned, because the TNT committee will be meeting quite a few more times in the next month or two. So pay attention to the schedule and calendar, committee members.
Yes.
Josephine, is our meeting that was scheduled for March 30th, is that in connection with the virtual meeting that will be presented by the DOT, or is ours something different?
Yeah, so March 30th, we received a notification of an application for an open street for Bay Ridge Prep. And unfortunately, our notification came a little bit after we had planned this meeting. And we try to get all stakeholders involved, and this date didn't work, which is why we scheduled another meeting. And the March 30th meeting, committee members, we are going to try to launch a hybrid meeting, because we've wired the community board office, and some of the residents who live along Ridge Boulevard don't have computers, and they asked if they could come in person. So I thought it would be a good time to kind of try it, having our vendor here to just walk me through it and have staff walk through it together. Dorothy's on the call, and we were trying to work it, and now that we're moving, we're soon to be moving into more hybrid settings for at least committee meetings. We're going to try the March 30th because it's one item on the agenda for the Open Street application at this point. There may be another Open Street application by the time we have our meeting, and that's our next meeting on the 30th.
That's fun. What a time to be alive with this technology.
Yeah,
I have a question.
sure.
Yeah, what on the 30th, is that a continuation of something that we've had previously with respect to the open streets?
It's not a continuation, but we did it's an annual application. So we reviewed the Open Street application for the prior school year. This application is for the next school year, which is the 23-24 school year.
Okay, will you give us more information and remind us about what the application?
Absolutely. You'll all get a beautiful homework package from the district manager from the district office.
Thank you very much.
And for those of you who are on zoning and land use and T&T, you're going to be getting lots of homework information packets over the next week.
Fun.
And I'll see y'all on the 30th.
I'll see you on the 30th.
Let's see you on the 30th.
Okay.
All right. Do I have a motion?
Good night.
Karen?
So moved.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.